Okay, excellent. All right. I would like to call to order the school committee meeting. And welcome, it's my pleasure to act as on behalf of Tim Lepre, so be kind to me. Am I allowed to say that? I hope so. I would like to begin by an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right. Are there any comments from the public? No. Then we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Sure, short and sweet. So I'll start with hiring and then get to enrollment. I'll start with some good news. Almost all of our classroom teacher positions are filled. We do have 7 positions across the district that still are not filled, but 2 are pending acceptances out of 7. So that's not too bad, ultimately, across 4 schools. We are still struggling to find 2 school psychologist positions, 1 social worker, and our English learner director position is still open. We also have 5 ESP positions open and no candidates. We are hearing that this across the country is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So we are struggling like every school district and many places of employment across the country. We are concerned about our teaching assistants as we now have 18 positions to fill and very few applicants. We have met with the NTU leadership just recently and have tentatively agreed on some changes to the TA contract that will allow for more time given back to TAs in the hopes that this will be more attractive to TAs and those particularly who might have difficulty finding childcare. So the contract changes will be voted on this week, and we will hopefully be advertising aggressively after that. Housing is still a major challenge for our new teachers coming from off-island, as the rental prices at market value are quite high for a teacher's salary. We also have some new staff that have pets, and very few rental properties will accept pets. Mm-hmm. So we're working on that, trying to get the word out and ask that everyone here listening ask as well, or find, ask whoever you can about some possibilities. In finishing on a happier note, I'm very glad to share that we have an HR specialist now. That is Miss Eileen Taveras, who has been with the district for 16 years as the interpreter, translator, and family liaison. She will begin her new role in central office on Monday, August 15th, and we are very excited to have her. We will miss her as our district translator and family liaison. And as I've mentioned in my email to everyone, her first job will be to recruit someone for herself to replace her own position. So enrollment. August projected enrollment, you'll see the enrollment sheet here, is up by 4 students from 1,716 to 1,720. So this may be in part due to us adding our postgraduate transitional students in our special education program. They were not in the previous month's projected enrollment. So that could account for the additional students. But I did want to mention one interesting phenomenon that perhaps you also saw, and that is our 9th grade class. If you look at our 9th grade class from our projected in July, that was going off of the June numbers, our numbers were lower, 163, and now they're at 185. That does not mean that we have that we have gained 22 students in our enrollment, but we have students that did not pass and are actually still classified as 9th graders. So they did not earn enough credits to be able to move from the 9th grade to the 10th grade, and that keeps them in the 9th grade year, and they'll be taking some 10th grade classes and some 9th grade classes. These students do need to retake a couple of classes. In particular, our Algebra 1 has been a class that we've seen a lot of failures, and biology is another one. So I know that Mandy Vassell, Jennifer Saradellis, and Mandy Bardsley are all kind of researching as to why this happened and maybe how they can help teachers in adjusting instruction to provide some better support for our struggling students, because that's a large number and we want to make sure that doesn't happen in the future. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And then I have one more additional piece that I did not have on the agenda that I'd like to share. So
Esmeralda, any questions?
No questions.
Rocky?
I have a question. When you did your last
blast for housing and things like that, and you got some kickback and feedback. Is there something you think to do again?
I could share another time, certainly with the Inquirer Mirror that ran a great story explaining the challenges that we have with housing. People really did understand and were very kind in getting us, in reaching out and saying that there were opportunities. The challenges that we have, though, are we're competing with the market value, which is really tough. And there are other folks out there looking for 10-month seasonal housing that will be able to or will consider paying market rate, which is about $4,000 for a 2-bedroom. So,
Okay. I guess my question is, when you put that out there, you did do Inquirer Mirror and Nantucket Current as well?
I didn't. The Current picked up the story, so it's
Okay.
been.
I think people, they read the paper on Thursday. They read social media on their phone every day. I think that sometimes you might get more bang for your buck if you were to use social media, i.e., well, the Inquirer Mirror also has a web page on a social media spot, and the Current does Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I think that maybe, as much as it costs, it might be might get more bang for your buck.
Right.
People read their phones, they don't read the paper.
Right. So that's a very good point. And Mrs. Bedell, who is our school committee clerk and also executive assistant, has been working hard to actually add those advertisements to the Nantucket Current, the Daybreak, above the page on above the fold, in the Inquirer Mirror. So we are headed in that direction to make sure we get advertisements up. So
That's all I have.
okay.
Thank you.
So I'd like to add one thing that I did not have on the agenda, and that is Mrs. Linda Peterson is here today, and I wanted to recognize her for a very special award that she received as the MVP for Chartwells this year. And she's here, and I wanted to just recognize her. We know that Linda is an MVP. She's our MVP, and she has done such a marvelous job at our food services under so many difficult situations, not only working with Island Kitchen and being very creative with our food truck during COVID, to figuring out how to serve all of the children who needed meal services, to dealing with food shortages, to dealing with staff shortages. She has done a remarkable job. So I am more than happy to support her and to congratulate her with this fantastic award through Chartwells. So Linda, thank you so much, and congratulations on your award.
Congratulations. All right, so if there are no more questions, we can move on to presentations and discussions of issues of interest to the committee. The Massachusetts School Administrators Association Conference Overview. Yes, I think you should all stand.
They have shirts.
And approach the podium.
Good evening. My name is Michael Horton. I'm the Cyrus Pierce Middle School principal, and I was nominated to lead off our summary of our leadership conference back in the end of July. MSAA, as Laura said, is the Massachusetts School Administrators Association. It is a very prestigious group. So as we speak, keep in mind that the 3-4 days was all geared to school principals, assistant principals, special ed directors, English language learner directors, and superintendents. Very few teachers or other roles present. So it was definitely an administrators conference, and it was just amazing, super positive. There are 8 of us, and most of us were there at least 2 days. A few of us were there 3 days, and I think Jen Sardellis was actually there for all 4 days. And Manny Vassal, when you include the 26th for a pre-conference. We have our shirts that we wore on the second to last day, a sign of unity. There's more to that story, which you'll probably hear about when we get into each of our slides. I'm just going to ask for each person, when you speak, just introduce yourself. You go over your slides that you review. And one member, Tracy Maylou, couldn't make it tonight, and I'll just go over her slides when we get to that point. So right off the bat, it was evident that the focus was about acknowledging how difficult last year was. How in the world could being back to school full-time in person in 21-22 be more difficult, more challenging than the COVID year of 2021 when we kept changing from remote to hybrid, back to remote, back to hybrid, to partial in person to full in person. And every one of those switches was very taxing and demanding on every person you see here and every administrator across the state. It was almost a weight off our shoulders right off the bat that they just acknowledged how difficult last year was. And the session that really made me go aha the most was entitled, "Students Are Struggling, So Now What?" And a couple slides here mentioned how the novelty of remote learning and these different wild schedules and all the creativity that teachers went into with Schoology and other applications, it wore off to some degree last year. It led to an increase in referrals, increase in destruction of property, students wandering, students avoiding class, avoiding work, more increased visits to counselors, nurses, absent rates increased. And that resulted in increase in teacher stress, more student failure, the referrals, the absences. And this speaker was from Holliston, Mass School District, just outside the 128 belt. And it was just really, reassuring to hear that her experience was exactly the same that I had at CPS last year. And, looking at Parks and Recreation and office, is it called the office?
It's called the office.
Yeah, I want to say office space, but that's not it.
No.
But Steve Carell and Amy Poehler, if you're fans of those shows, you can see how teachers in September are ready to go. But last year, teachers in October felt the way they normally do in June. They were exhausted after 1 month in. Fried, done, survival mode, just working day to day, not knowing what was going to happen next, not knowing who was going to be present, not present, through contact tracing, through COVID positive cases, et cetera, et cetera. So people throw out this idea of COVID recovery, and it's just, it's not right, okay? Students are struggling. And on top of that, we experienced that the supports were limited or unavailable. We know that students of all ages were struggling with decision-making, engagement, regulation, and perseverance. On top of that, student rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide were an all-time high. We all know that this, applies to adults and members of our community across the entire nation and the world. But when we are living and caring for our students, it hits us really hard because we're thinking about maybe our own family members, but most likely we're worried more about our staff, about our teachers, and our kids. And when we do that, we forget about ourselves. So a lot of the first, I would say, day and a half was just acknowledging how hard it was last year, and that, again, keep in mind that the audience's administration is that there was never really once a thought of, like, how are we doing? Like, who's taking care of the administrators? We had to have all the answers. We had to be ready to go all the time. And we all accept that responsibility, and that's why we're in these roles. But it was just a really neat way to start the conference, just to acknowledge that, okay? And you're gonna hear some more slides about how we're, in turn, going to acknowledge that with our staff. And that's the beginning of building culture and positivity to move onward and upward as we start this year. She went on further to say, did you see this too? All the avoiding skills, all the avoidance of leaving class, truant, not wanting to do tasks, technologically trapped, inability to navigate. I went to a math session, and we had some math professional development last week. Students don't know how to start a game. Students don't know how to win. Students don't know how, or they've lost that skill of how to lose. So it reminds us that we have to explicitly teach these relationships because it was deprived of many students for more than a year. TikTok challenges, destructive poor decisions. TikTok is not unique to Nantucket. I mean, that was across the entire country. Then, when it turned positive, the two keynote speakers were simply amazing, and probably going to reference Thomas C. Murray and Joe Sanfilippo the most. Here are a couple of the things that really struck a chord with me, and that I'm going to continue to refer to as we begin this year, as we start to move forward with the staff of the middle school. When did we stop being proud and start defending everything that we did, or every decision that we made? We build culture 30 seconds at a time. That's a testament to the individuality of working with one person, of giving that person the attention that they deserve, that at that moment they are the most important person in your entire life for whatever their needs might be. Every staff member, every parent that comes into your office, every phone call. Every interaction matters because it could be the one people talk about for the rest of their life. We never give up the opportunity to say something great about our schools. In other words, you have to write the narrative, otherwise someone else will. And then data is great, but the story wins every time. There are so many individual stories that administrators, principals, superintendents shared about a person who did X, Y, and Z last year. And we all knew someone like that. We all knew a custodian who one day when the students parted the hallway and they moved to get out of the way of the cart was weeping because they've never done that before. After working through some culture for students to understand and have some empathy for all the roles of everyone in a building, it was just amazing, positive moment to realize that we can do this. Last year was hard, but we're going to move on and upward. So they talked about all the academic committees and groups to form, whether it's an academic or a behavior or a social emotional. Topics of developing culture, developing teams, what are we doing to improve instruction? You're going to hear more about that over the coming weeks, about our big focus on UDL, the Universal Design for Learning. I really love the math workshop model, guided math that we participated in last week. Parent engagement, parent coaching, some support groups for parents, getting students involved, especially at the middle and high school level, getting students part of professional development, bringing students into faculty meetings, getting students on committees, whether it's a discipline committee. And then this is an idea from Natick, a whole mentality theme on no place for hate. And every time there was any type of incident that revolved around racism or sexism or any other terrible ism, it was addressed and kids were held accountable. And there were follow-up conversations and the parents were involved and the parents were held accountable. It's a lot of work, it's exhausting, but after that 3 or 4 days in Plymouth, late July, I think we're ready to do it. I think we can do it. All right, I'm done.
Well, yeah, so there's a fun slide, the reflections and takeaways. So each of us selected something that mattered or really spoke to us, and we each did one slide for that purpose. That's Kim Albertson. She's exceptional at the selfie. And she threw a few of us into that, but you note that we are diligently looking at our schedule, which was on our phones.
That's right.
I did too.
Yes.
At one point. One of the things that I'd also like to mention, I'm Deb Gately, the Director of Special Services. I'd like to also mention and thank Travis Lombardi, who outfitted us for the conference. He was wonderful in doing so. And one of the things that Nantucket was known at this conference in a positive way, not negative, very positive. Joe Sanfilippo, who's in the upper left-hand corner, was one of our keynote speakers and incredibly motivational. He's the superintendent of a very small school district I think 1,200 kids total.
Fall Creek, Wisconsin.
Yep, Fall Creek, Wisconsin, and he lives right across the street from the school. It's one school, pre-K to 12.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he talked about was the fact he alluded to, and what my takeaway was is what something that he said. But it's one of the things that they had done very early on in building culture in his district was thinking about the fact of all of the kids and being as inclusive as possible and keeping the center on the kids. And that resonated with all of us very quickly because that's what our goal is as well. Everything we do is centered on kids. We don't exist without our kids. And how do we get to that place of making things better for them? One of the quotes that I took away from Joe was, we need to take care of the adults who take care of the adults who take care of kids. And it seems to be very, very complex, but it's really not. When you consider the fact of, on the surface, it looks like, oh, the adults who take care of the adults who take care of the kids, that's us. But that's more than that. It's more than that because I can speak, again, my narrative, my story. In my role, I work with a variety of agencies. I work with a variety of families, with teachers, with administrators, and I treasure that role based on the fact that we can affect positive change by working together, but only if we are okay ourselves to do so. And that, for me, is paramount in the work that we do on a daily basis. Again, my own narrative as I begin my 30th year in education in September in over 4 districts and understanding. This was my 9th conference for MSAA. I've served on their board of directors. In 2015, I was recognized as Massachusetts Middle School Principal of the Year. All of that is wonderful. Never did I feel until the end of this conference of being part of a unified administrative team. And like I said, I've been in MSAA for 12 years. But the reality is that we're small but mighty, is what I kind of like to look at it as. And one of the things that we had done, as Joe Sanfilippo had mentioned, they have a very simple hashtag that they use on all of their communication. It's hashtag Go Crickets. Their mascot is the cricket. But what we were talking about was the idea of how do we make that inclusive hashtag that we can use on everything. So we're still trending this, right? Yeah, we're working on it. But what we came up with was hashtag We're All Whalers because of the fact that, you know, whaler pride and all of this, but including the we is understanding the kids, the families, the community. We're all in this together and trying to figure it all out. And honestly, it's something that I hope we can just not talk about this evening, but carry it through for many, many years to come, is understanding that until we're taking care of and thinking about and listening to stories and not being bogged down by the data of what's happening and what's not happening, we have that opportunity in this community because of the size of us and because of the relationships that we all work so hard on every day. So that's what I wanted to just share in terms of my takeaway.
Keep it brief.
Yeah, me too, so. good for you.
Adrienne Lombardi, I'm one of the assistant principals at CPS. I'm not going to repeat kind of what has already been presented, and you can kind of see the slide, but I think given the nature of the last 2 years for us as a middle school, and then I think district-wide, just really staying true to like very, very simple but important, I think, is also trending, what our big rocks are or what our focus is, and staying true to that throughout the entire year. The social, emotional, academics, and behaviors all kind of go in together. You can't have learning, you can't have kids taking in the content if they are behaviorally dysregulated or they are distracted from a social, emotional standpoint. So they're all working together in order to kind of take on that whole child approach. And these are kind of some ways that I resonated with me in terms of just really looking at our engagement, looking at our procedures. A middle school motto typically, I feel, is that you can't expect what you don't teach. And so you can't just expect them to know, and I think it's even more so with COVID. You can't expect, oh, they should know this. We have to go through it and model it and repeat and stop them if they're not doing what is expected and start over. So that's kind of where I'd like us to focus in working as a CPS team this year.
Hi, Kim Albertson, entering 31st year in district, 4th year at admin, first timer at MSAA. All things considered, it was really fabulous. I'd like to thank school committee and Superintendent Hallett, because we also need to recognize that you take care of adults as well. So thank you for allowing us to go. It's all about the story, and really for me it was that acronym FEAR, because we saw that in students and teachers alike and all of us at some point. And rechanging that narrative to not be forget everything and run, and face everything and rise was very, very powerful for me. Thanks.
I'm Kim Kubish. I'm the thrilled principal of Nantucket Elementary School, and I, too, am 30-plus years in education. And so this came from one of our keynote speakers. And one of the things that I would say about both of the keynote speakers is they were happy to share everything. Resources galore, websites, contact us, phone numbers, they were amazing. And my biggest takeaway was this sense of unity, not only for us, but as a state and as leaders, because the work is hard. And for us living on an island, I think it just gets magnified that when we went there and were so reassured that, oh, hey, this happened to everyone. COVID was not just something that occurred in Nantucket, and that everybody experienced this. So I think about this slide from sort of my educational perspective that I've had for 30 years, whether it be a classroom teacher or a central office administrator or a principal. It's like a rhombus. We start up here, and we are teaching adults who teach kids. And so we have to model our expectations, and that will then build trust. And then trust is that foundation for relationships. And no matter what you do in any place in education, you've got to have relationships. So it's back to the things that Mike talked about. It's back to the story. It's back to the understanding that we're all people trying to do our very best here and build that relationship so that then helps build our culture. And a large focus for Kim and I at NES will be all about culture this year, and really trying to get us back to, not back to the place we were before, but maybe feeling a little bit like back to the place where we were before, where it wasn't all the protocols and the shifts and the changes, but really do in that rhombus-like way. If the administration and school committee do these things, then teachers do these things. We know the most impactful person in a child's education is their teacher. And you have to have a relationship to be effective for that child. So we're hoping to start with joy and end with joy.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Saradellis, Assistant Principal at Nantucket High School. And Principal Vassal and I attended the pre-conference workshop titled Strategies to Lead Learning and Rebuild School Culture, so leading out of the pandemic. And I won't go into all the specifics of each of the 6 strategies that I've shared with you, because they really do talk about all of these themes that we've mentioned here this evening, how you then put those to practice. When we talk about relationship building, how do you then go about do that? When we talk about building culture in a school, how do you then go about do that? And so the 6 strategies that they discussed was beginning with beliefs, talking with your teaching staff, bringing them back to basics, asking them what are their belief systems. Really, our beliefs guide what our culture is like in our schools. It guides how we practice instruction. It guides what we consider to be good curriculum. And so it's important to know what our belief systems are when we're talking about starting any school year. And then really defining the learning that we hope to take place throughout the school year. And we did an exercise called Ask What If. And so it wasn't, what if we had another new school? It was your things in your realm of influence. And so some of the things that were discussed were, what if we had communal spaces throughout a school for kids to sit and talk and discuss? What if we had additional spaces for kids to have lunch? What if we had flexible scheduling? Those types of things. Work smarter, not harder. We worked really, really hard last year, and I think because of this phenomena of all the new things and getting back to figuring out what our systems are, and old systems weren't working and we're building our plane in flight, sometimes we were working really, really hard, and I don't want to say not smart, but we really need to take a look at what are our systems that we currently have in place, and how can we work smarter and not harder so that we're not exhausting ourselves by October and we have a little bit more steam to get over the hump of the holiday season and into the spring. And then we talked a lot about workshops and meeting and PD design. So as educators, it's really important, as it's been discussed, that we model what we expect teachers to be doing in the classroom. So when we're scheduling meetings, whether they be our faculty forums, whether they be administrative meetings, whether they be PD or our extended workday, how are we structuring those meetings? And are we using strategies and modeling the techniques that we're asking teachers and evaluating teachers on within their classroom settings? Do they align? Are they mirroring one another? And then plan for the year ahead. And so that's what we have really taken the time to do this summer. I think past summers were consumed with COVID protocols and now what do we do? This summer really was about taking time to take care of ourselves, but also to really think strategically about how do we want to launch this new school year? What do we want teachers to experience? And then most importantly, what do we want our students to experience?
So I'm going to pinch it for Tracy Mather, assistant principal at CPS. It's all about the relationships you build and maintain. Are you a leader by title or a leader by action? Some of the quotes here from Neely Bartley and Joe Sanfilippo are people, colleagues that Tracy has worked with in the past and at previous leadership conferences around the country pre-COVID. Students as co-pilots. Say yes, or at least why not. Take two things you're doing right now and put a multiplier on it. Then add one. Then add one new thing to try. You've seen this quote already that Kim Kubish referenced. That was very powerful. The expectations to trust. Trust is the foundation of relationships, and relationships is the foundation to culture. And then the acronym here: learn, empower, adapt, delegate, engage, reflect, and serve. That's what we are striving to do.
Hi, Mandy Vassell, principal at the high school. I'm heading into my third year here at Nantucket. It will be my 22nd year as an administrator, assistant principal, and principal combined. This was, I believe, my 15th MSAA conference. And I generally like to look at the conference as a way of re-energizing myself and trying to learn at least one thing new that I can use in the new school year. This year, what really resonated with me is how do we work with our teachers and how do we help them get back to their passion and their why, their reason why they're in education to begin with. And to go back to beliefs that Ms. Saradelis was speaking about, it is my belief as an administrator that it is our responsibility to do as much as we can to make the job easier for teachers so that they can really do what needs to be done in the classroom. So moving forward for this school year, and this was what I was really looking forward to at the conference, is finding what we need to really get us fired up to start off the new school year. And I fully believe, and Miss Sarah Dallas and I have talked about it, that at the high school, some of the things that we need to do is we're going to start with supporting our teachers with what they do well and encourage them to continue doing that. And then also encourage them to try something new. Maybe they learn a new strategy from one of their colleagues, or maybe it's something through professional development. One thing that I really feel like that has been lacking these last couple of years, and through no fault of our teachers, but just again because of COVID and the circumstances that we've been in, is that we really have to strive to involve our parents more. And we're going to be looking at making more parent phone calls, but we're also going to be encouraging our teachers to find ways to extend the classroom lesson to the home. How do you help your students to go home and talk about this concept or this idea with your parents at home and get their viewpoints, and now let's bring that back to the classroom and talk about that, and what does that have to do with what we've been studying? We have to allow our students to lead more of the learning process. I think it's really important, and this is my own personal belief, and I will own this every single day, that the more responsibility that we give to our students, the more they learn, the more that they're ready to leave high school and be able to do it on their own. And then I think all along we have to make sure that we're including cultural awareness and social emotional needs in our daily instruction, and all the while making sure that we are working on and maintaining relationships. I think all of that's really important. This slide came from Joe Sanfilippo. And this one really spoke to me of all the things that we saw as an administrator. I think this is one of the most important, is that the greatest gift of service that you give to another human being is for the time you are with them. They are the center of your universe. And I think it's really important that we all strive to do that every day.
Thank you all so much. I just want to say that I'm really moved by all of your stories and your shirts and just the feeling of camaraderie that I can feel from all of you.
So in conclusion, I've been honored to serve on the AP, MSA AP committee for the last 6 years. And this past year, when we sat down to think of our theme for the annual AP conference, we decided our theme should be Back to the Future. So if you're familiar with the 80s blockbuster hit, you know that Marty McFly is transported via time machine back to 1955, which could be described by some as a simpler time. He then works through the movie to return back to the future. When he finally awakes back in good old 1985, he finds himself in his same familiar bed, in his same familiar house, with his same familiar family. However, he quickly realizes that although all the pieces of his life are now back in place, nothing is the same. Is this sounding familiar to anyone? We began last school year dreaming of a simpler time, a time pre-pandemic. We believed we would finally be back to normal. Yet when we arrived and began searching our hallways and classrooms to find any semblance of normal in our day-to-day activities, we came to realize that school was anything but normal. Much like Marty McFly, we discovered that all the pieces were there, but nothing was the same. As we sat through the sessions at the annual MSAA Summer Institute, we learned of strategies and practices to lead our schools forward. We learned about what it means to be a culturally proficient leader, the importance of relationships, and the importance of not only caring for the whole child, but for the whole educator and the whole administrator as well. We were reminded that culture is not something you declare, but rather something that is collectively and collaboratively built among all stakeholders of a school community. In short, we learned how to get back to the future. The future that we are now creating in real time, it will look different from the past. You see, through the pandemic, we discovered new best practices, practices that are more inclusive and more equitable for our students. We learned how important both student and teacher voice is to building authentic, safe, and meaningful learning experiences. We were reminded that collaboration and building trusting relationships must guide all that we do. As we work through this year to get back to our future, we will lead differently, we will teach differently, and our students will learn differently. We will focus on getting back to basics, and this evening we have given you a small glimpse of how we plan to lead forward to a new normal. It is no longer a simpler time. It is an exciting time. It's a time that will challenge us to be better, more innovative, more inclusive, and to better care for both the students and the adults in our school community. We are Nantucket Public Schools, an inclusive community of learners growing and succeeding together. We are all Whalers.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? Esmeralda?
No questions.
Rocky?
Oh, yeah, I got some questions. My first question is, thank you, because you were teachers, you're administration now, but you were teachers once upon a time. So now you have to teach the teachers. Is this thing on? And I admire you for that. Question, is this the first time y'all went as a team?
Yes.
Why is that?
Jen Sardellis? And not, like, Kim and I, this was our first time.
I mean,
Like,
if you, it's a baseball team. We have a right fielder, left fielder, pitcher, catcher. When you're strong, you have the whole squad. You know what I mean? So this is the first time you all went together?
Yeah, so the high
But
school
in
has
30 years, y'all been teachers?
Well, the high school has gone several years. Dr. Bucky and I went together. And then last year, Mrs. Vassal and Deb and I, we all went, the three of us. And we were feeling very lonely, and we were missing our team. And over the last couple years, the admin team has grown very close. And so we decided this year that we would try to all go together as a team, and Dr. Hallett supported that wholeheartedly, and so we were able to go together. I just want to say that the intermediate school is very much part of our team, and they had just attended a conference, right, just before that, and so it didn't
I'm
work out.
not trying to single you out.
Yeah,
Nope.
no, it just didn't work out in
Where's
their
your shirt?
schedule this year, but,
Yeah, but we look forward to having them next year as part of the team
Yes.
because we did place 3rd out of 6 in the trivia night, and we would like to have them back for us next year.
yes,
mean,
and
I-
our trivia name is Deb Gately and the Whalers, so
You-
I think that's,
I just,
part of the fun.
my analogy is what I'm trying to say. If you, I use baseball as an analogy.
yeah.
To get to the major leagues, you have to go through single A, double A, triple A. I use this analogy because we said NES to NIS to CPS. The team has to be on the same
Yes,
plan, and it. So happy you guys all went together.
it was very
And
fun.
you know, sometimes the best job is just to be outside of the school. Now,
And
I have-
I also want to just mention that in addition to Jen being on the AP committee, Mandy has been on the Summer Institute
Yes.
Planning Committee for many years. I formerly was on that committee as well. And what had happened, I think, with everybody that came, we've all established relationships with people from around the state that we were also able to collaborate and join together and learn from one another as well, which has also been it was really enriching.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions. But my next question is, you talked about therapy for the teachers and admin. Do teachers have access to therapy to go someplace they want to?
I can address that. So, yeah, through the town, we have the employee support system to be able to, they can access it through reaching out to me, they can reach out to the superintendent's office, and very often, it will then transition to Eileen when she takes over as human resources, that she'll be able to do that. But I honestly think to address your question, Mr. Fox, that is sincerely something we need to do better at advertising.
Do the teachers know of this?
They do, but it usually happens contextually, like when something happens. Like it's better for us to advertise it wholeheartedly, to know that those services are available, and it's at no cost through the town and the district for them to be able to access those resources. And we would like to see them access them proactively as opposed to reactively.
Can I just add one thing to that? Is Dr. Gately said that they go through her, or they go through Dr. Hallett. For the EAP program, teachers don't even have to do that. All they have to do is call the 800 number and set
Right.
it up, and that way it's truly confidential. And no one in the district has to know that the teachers even did that.
Right.
Which to me, I
Yeah,
think
when
is
we give out the information, we don't specify that you have to say you're from the schools to do that.
if I may, through the facilitator.
I'm so sorry.
I think that this is an important, I'm glad that you brought this up, because I think this is an important part of our new teacher orientation. And we need to make sure that we put extra emphasis on this opportunity. It's not easy, being a teacher in a post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, in general. And then couple that with the difficulty that we see and isolation that we see here on Nantucket. That said, it's really important that people know they have the resources. So we should make sure that we make extra sure that our teachers know, especially our new teachers. But we should remind those that have been here as well, so that they have access as well.
One more, well, three more things. You said they knew Nantucket, but why?
Because we showed up dressed together. I mean, no, I mean, honestly, that we were pretty well known last year, I guess, because people were fascinated to talk to us about what it was like to work on Nantucket and to educate on Nantucket. But we came out as a force this year. People knew when we came in. We sat together at the joint ventures, or the joint presentations. We ate lunch together, and it was really, people could see. And I think we had one of the largest groups there.
And participated in all the extracurricular.
We did.
Cornhole and team building and trivia and perhaps a dance party.
that we created on our own. That wasn't the schedule.
There's no video. My
Yeah,
next
so you
question
think.
is, when you want to hashtag that We Are Whalers, you might want to make note of New Bedford is also called the Whalers.
They are. That's why we are all whalers.
Okay. And my last question, and thank you all. When you said it's up to the parents, but it's up to the kids to get that message home to the parents, at some point there's lost in translation for the kid to get to the parent. I'm not sure how you, as admin, can talk to the teachers, to talk to the kids. If it's 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, how do we get that to the parents?
So one of the things that we discussed as an admin team, I know that we're all in discussions about creating our own school-based or department-based Facebook pages. Social media is an avenue of communication. There's very few people that we talk to that don't go on some kind of social media. We also need to look at our website. We need to look at how to overhaul and to make it an accessible website for our families. And I hope that we can kind of move forward to doing that as well. And we've discussed that as a team because there's a lot of information that people will go to look at on the site that's not there.
Well, you just answered my next question. Social media, website, that's how, I love the Inquirer Mirror, but I'm not waiting till Thursday to read it. I'll read the Current 3 days a week.
Yep.
As much as it costs, that's the first thing I look at. Thank you, admin, so very much. I'm sorry to ask too many questions.
Thank you so much. As I said, I'm very moved by your stories. And the question that I have is, it's always so rejuvenating, as you said, because you come back and you have that feeling of camaraderie. And how do you keep that? How do you sustain that through the year? That's the challenge. So are there other workshops that you would be able to attend? Because you can't underestimate, you can't replicate what you all experienced in any other setting. Not even if you did it here, it's very different. So do you know if there are other, I'm sure there are. So I would just like to say that is something I think is very important for us as a committee
Through the
to
chair,
support.
could we host something out here?
You're reading my mind.
So this is MSAA, and we all belong to that as leaders here. So they are constantly, I probably get an email daily from MSAA of all the different opportunities that they have, share updates, meetings, boards, elections, all of that. And for, you guys would know better, but elementary schools were not initially part of this. And they just got into it 3, 4. So this year I'm participating in it's not a follow-up to the Summer Institute, but it's a follow-up on what's driving my choice for learning, and it's the Soul of Leadership, it's called, and it will, Dr. Hallett has supported my participation in that, and it will go for the entire year.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy to hear that. So I agree with Rocky in that
I mean,
it'd be wonderful.
through the
to-
chair, I think since Pauline's not here, we should do something at our house. Just vote her in. We'll tell her tomorrow.
She can watch it on television. This is a little bit of a sidebar, but mentioning the website, who does maintain that and is in charge of the social media?
Let me share. So prior to this year, Logan O'Connor was in charge of the website, and now we have a change. So we have Katie Bedell, and we also have Eileen Tavares coming in, who has a master's degree in communication and public relations. So between these two powerhouses, I have no question that we will be able to not only eventually update and really overhaul our website, which may mean bringing in a consultant to just really look at it and figure out what we want, but also to get us on social media in an appropriate and safe way, so that we've finally joined the 21st century. So I think it is time for us to do that. So that's my pledge for this
Great.
year.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions, thank you again, and we'll move on to food service financial report.
Good evening. Martin Angelou, Director of Finance at Nantucket Public Schools. I'll try to follow up the exciting presentation that you just saw by rattling out a bunch of numbers. I'm going to actually start with the way the end of year presentation goes. We go Nantucket Public Schools, Community School, and then we go through the food service program as well. So we ended up the year expending fully at 100% our total budget, which for FY22 was $32,876,000, and of that 80% was payroll, and the budget in FY22 was $1,580,000 over the previous fiscal year in 21. This year we saw it was very challenging financially. Obviously, a lot of different unknowns and things that were very fluid throughout the year. Transportation, food service, hiring, everything was happening at the same time. So the budget was sufficient to cover all our needs, but it was a challenging situation. So I want to thank everybody that participated in the budget process: the food service director, the community school, transportation, Superintendent Hallett, and the school committee, because it was not an easy year. Utility costs increased this year over $205,000 in total for all our buildings. Of that, oil was by far the biggest unknown. It kept fluctuating wildly, especially at the beginning of this calendar year, and ended up over $131,000 over the previous year. Propane, which we used in NIS, went up over $13,000, and electricity over $30,000. So that alone was substantial. We had some large projects which were budgeted. I mean, they weren't an unexpected expense. Phase 2 of the science curriculum books that are being purchased for grades K through 5, over $131,000, and also some IMAX for the whole district, over $42,000. Sadly, I have to speak about this. We ended up incurring expenses that were not anticipated and should not have been expenses for the Nantucket Public School District. Between $45,000 and $50,000 were expended in the year to cover acts of vandalism, which were somewhat inspired, seemingly, by, like Michael Horton touched upon, TikTok challenges. That included clogging up bathrooms, destruction of fixtures in bathrooms, playground equipment at NES was broken on purpose. A fire was set, of all places, in the auditorium on purpose. I want to personally express my gratitude to the facilities department in general. This was extremely extremely difficult year for that department to deal with keeping the buildings going. We also had natural disasters occurring, burst pipes, lightning strike to begin the year. So there's been numerous things that occurred and were unfortunate. But I want to say we take great pride. I travel around when I go for my professional development as part of the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials around Massachusetts. I can honestly say that we have better buildings and better facilities and grounds than probably 90% of the school districts that I have visited. So it's imperative that we really maintain them and keep them. It's unfortunate we end up spending $50,000 or more funding that could have been used for more appropriate purpose. So we ended up also covering from our operating budget the food service program deficit, which was this year was $68,000. A huge reduction from last year, over $197,000 less than what we covered last year. So kudos to Linda and her staff, everybody at Chartwell's, and everybody that worked at the program. But that was an expense as well this year. So the community school it was a recovery year. It is what I would call it. Okay, I know the term is not appropriate probably, but it was a year that brought back the community school to where it should have been. It was sadly it was going great, and then obviously COVID happened. So there were a lot of challenges. A lot of programs were not run or revenues were lost, but thankfully the community provided huge support. All the organizations on the island remain Nantucket Community Foundation, Nantucket Education Trust, Nantucket Golf Club, and numerous small donors and organizations which contributed so that the community school can run its programming and maintain its financial equilibrium. So they ended up the year with a surplus over $2,400. Revenues were up, programming revenues were up over $206,000 for the year. That was a great trend to see. And the expenses obviously were up as well, over $156,000, mostly due to increased insurance costs, close to $97,000 increase in medical insurance costs, and the purchase of a new vehicle at a little over $28,000. So again, thanks to all the organizations, all the staff of the community school, everybody involved with this organization and the support, because this has been a challenging 2.5 years now. So, school lunch program, like I said, ended up with a little over $68,000 deficit, but it was much less than the over $265,000 that we had last year. We served double the amount of lunches and almost double the amount of breakfasts this year, as the school cafeterias came back to a little bit more normal way of serving. We are hoping, and this is my personal hope, that we will be back to where we were 2019, serving cafeterias and having kids communicate with each other and see each other and really have the lunch as more of a social kind of event as well, not just assigned to classrooms. So that's this year, just an update on the school lunch program. We will be having, again, the state of Massachusetts, together with 7 more states, has decided to provide free meals to everybody for that upcoming school year as well. We just got today, hot off the press, like Linda would say. She forwards every email that she gets to me, so I get the information. We will get the reimbursement rate is higher than last year. It's slightly lower than the one that we had for this year, so it's going to be around $4.40 for a lunch, and about $2.25, if I'm not mistaken, $2.26 for breakfast. But that's where we are. So, if anybody has any questions.
Esmeralda, any questions?
If I may, through the facilitator. Refresh my memory, with the school deficit of this year being $68,000 and the year previous 197,000. Why was a decrease? I think you've explained it before, but
Well, last year, this for the food service program. So the decrease of 197 was last year. The revenues were down. As you can see, revenues this year are up by $425,000 because in the beginning it took time and participation wasn't as high as it was this year. Like Mike just said, we had times that we were hybrid, times that we didn't have kids in.
Sure.
Wednesday was a remote day. We had kids that were there 2 days when we were in a hybrid model. Then they were off for the rest of the week. So the participation was nowhere near what the food service program saw this year. So the revenues are up, and they are up because we obviously served these meals and then got reimbursed from the state.
Okay.
Also, the rate was higher. Like I mentioned, in January this year, they increased the rate at which they reimburse us, and so that was a plus this year as well. On the expense side, even though there was an increase, that was more than offset by the increase in revenues. So that's why the subsidy was lower.
okay. Thank you.
Rocky?
I have no questions.
I just want to comment on the vandalism. It's a shame, and I feel like just after, on the heels of hearing about the workshop and the institute, I feel like just building that sense of pride in the school will do a lot to sort of counteract. That's my belief. So, thank you, Martin.
Excuse me, through the facilitator.
Yeah.
When we, and through Dr. Howe, when we started doing the new website and social media, the community school being included in that as well, right?
Of course, yes. They have their own website, but there's no reason why we can't have a connection page and a location where, right on our first initial page, that can go directly to the community school.
Right, so it's just, it's kind of
Yeah.
symbiotic, correct?
Of course.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to committee discussions and votes to be taken. No?
There is another. It's included under presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have anything to present about the student activity account. I just want to.
Oh, thank you.
It's a statement that establishes new student activity accounts. So it's the first item actually on the votes to be taken. We need
Oh.
to. Yeah. It's the authorization. First of the limits on the student activity accounts. As you know, every school principal has a checking account for student activities, and the limits are $15,000 for the Nantucket High School and $5,000 for each other school: Nantucket Elementary School, Nantucket Intermediate School, and Cyrus Pierce. So these need to be reauthorized every year. And we also create the following accounts, which we add this year. The class of 2026, Nantucket High School will move from middle school to high school. That is the upcoming 9th grade. Class of 2029 will be moved from the intermediate school into Cyrus Pierce. Class of 2032 in the intermediate school will move to intermediate school from the elementary school. And we have to establish a new one, the class of 2035, which is the upcoming pre-K class.
Incredible.
Yes. Head spinning.
So that's all that I have to present about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin.
It's an
So,
opportunity to make a correction from our presentation.
Yes.
The group got together.
No, they didn't.
Well, we just discussed.
I just shared with you and asked you to say it.
And Kim Kubish just wants to make sure on the record that she did not mean rhombus, which is like a square parallelogram, but she actually meant like a trapezoid, where there's a shorter side in the top and then a little bit longer,
If you
and then
don't
the
give
foundation
up,
is in the
it's
bottom.
Killing me
Yeah.
that I said rhombus when I meant trapezoid.
it changes everything for me, I have to say.
I want to revote.
Yeah, because I was like, we hear.
The only person who got that was Martin. He's like, that's not right.
Killing me.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good?
Mr. Woods.
Okay.
Thank you for that correction. So now, we move on. vote to establish a maximum checking account. Is this correct? So this is what we just,
So it's actually reauthorizing the policy we already have for the account, reauthorizing these limits for the upcoming year. That's all there is to it.
so a motion to reauthorize the amounts indicated for each class.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm not opposed.
Motion approved.
It's on the rhombus thing.
Vote to approve donation grant from Community Foundation for Nantucket to NCS Summer Boost Program of $10,000. Do I
So
have-
moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Vote to approve donation from Sconset Union Chapel to NCS to support Summer Boost Program for $3,000.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Vote to approve June 14th, 2022 workshop session meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Vote to approve July 19th, 2022 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Vote to approve July 26th, 2022 workshop session meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Transfers and invoices. Have a motion to approve?
So
Approve.
moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Subcommittee work group report?
None.
If I may,
Yes.
I would like to meet with the Food Services Advisory, which we will be starting. So I believe that is Pauline Proch and you, or Gallagher Byrne. We will meet just briefly with myself and with Linda Peterson to discuss how to begin the group and how we will plan to, our overview for the year. So we want to make sure we do that prior to the start of school if we can, so that we can have consistent meeting practice throughout the year.
Great, thank you. Anything else, Esmeralda, Rocky?
No, ma'am.
The agenda for the next meeting, August 23rd, 2000, ooh,
That's okay.
we have a little typo.
Yes, there is a little typo. It should be
2022.
22. Yep.
That would give us a long time.
That's true.
Workshop session,
Yes.
superintendent evaluation, district improvement plan, year 4, and school committee goals 2022 through 2023.
Yes. That's correct. So we will be addressing each of those pieces in the
Yes.
workshop.
So do I have a motion to approve?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. That's
So moved.
I've been doing, actually, I think I'm proud of myself.
You're good.
I'm getting,
Good job,
getting.
Coach.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in
I
favor?
was just waiting a little bit.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
You're the stand-in. The
was-
girl, she think.
It was, I know, I'm the understudy.
Stage
It's
that
the
night.
understudy.
Other than you, the stand-in. Come in.
Before you leave,